Good evening, everyone. Highways, byways, streets and roads, city, county, state, even federal, all up for discussion in the next hour as we focus on surface transportation in Arkansas, hard surfaces. Arkansas has a lot of it. Too much, some would argue, at least too much in the state system. No one, though, would dispute that there is too little money available to adequately maintain it, let alone improve or expand it. Where does the system stand now, and what is the near-term outlook for making it better? With us for the next 60 minutes is the Senior Executive Officer of the Arkansas State Highway and Transportation Department. Now, that is your department, just as this is your network and your program, so we'll be taking your questions a bit later in the broadcast. Scott Bennett, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Why don't we just start at this hour? This is a live broadcast, and the subject on everybody's lips is not taxes or asphalt or concrete, but weather and what the department is prepared to do to keep the asphalt and concrete passable during this weather.
Well, and that is the question at hand, and I think to help everyone realize where we are today, we should go back and talk about 2 years ago. So in 2014, we had one of the worst winter storms in history. It actually came in as a series of 3 winter storms, and it really highlighted some of the inefficiencies that we have. And
right.
We've always tried to, keep staffing levels down, keep equipment purchases at a minimum and things of that nature. And that storm really highlighted where we needed to make improvements. And after that series of storms came through, we really sat back and made a lot of changes, met with a lot of states up north to talk about their snow and ice removal efforts. At that point, we started to transfer $18 million a year from our construction program over to maintenance so we could buy more materials, so we could upgrade our equipment. And today, we are in better shape than we were 2 years ago. The storm that came in last year, we were able to handle better than we had before. This year, now, especially today with the storm coming in, we have all of our crews that are deployed. They're ready to go. One of the things that is a tricky part is when rain is coming in first, how soon can you pre-treat the road? Because if the rain comes in, it may wash all the treatment away. But we have a weather forecasting system that is our own that we're using to determine when we start to put down a lot of rock salt on the road tonight. We have a strike force that is headquartered at our central offices, and we have deployed several of those trucks and those employees to the eastern and northeastern part of the state where it's projected to be the worst part of the storm.
Yeah, I was going to ask, where are those assets concentrated? This is shape-shifting constantly, and I think everyone's wise enough to know that. But right. At this hour, where are those resources deployed and
we have several that are in the Little Rock metropolitan area, and then we have them all along Interstate 40 east of here and Interstate 55 north, because those are right now projected to be some of the worst hit areas of the state. And one of our goals is to make sure we keep the interstates clear first. That's where the majority of our travel is. So that's the other thing we've done is we have decided to concentrate our efforts on those higher traveled routes like the interstates. Once we get a lane open on the interstate, we'll move to some of the other higher traveled non-interstate routes. But a lot of the crews are in the central and eastern and northern Arkansas areas right now, with a lot of the other crews on standby in case we need to mobilize them from other areas of the state that may not be hit right now. But crews all over the state are preparing for this event tonight.
Okay, there might be an appropriate time then, Director Bennett, to share with the audience. This is a video presentation that the department, not AETN, but the Highway Department has prepared regarding its storm preparations and foul weather preparations, and it might be a good time to share that. So if we can go ahead and roll that at this time.
You start just prior to the winter equipping these things, but ultimately when it's time to go, you mount the plow, you place the spreader in the back of the truck, you boom it down, you ensure that every moving operational part of that truck is functional, and then you're ready to go.
Starting in September, the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department works equipping trucks for winter weather. This winter, the department is making sure it is well ahead of the curve in the battle against winter weather. We spoke with Danny Keene, the division head of equipment and procurement for the department.
What you see in the shop is pretty evident just in increasing the number of trucks with belly plows, with bigger, heavier front snow plows, bigger spreaders with more capacity. Ultimately, by the end of this buying season, all of our districts will have at least a few of these new generation trucks. Been able to increase our capacity of salt storage all over the state. There's just been a lot of activities leading up and getting ready for this winter.
With outfitting these new trucks, the department is working on new techniques to more effectively clear the roads.
As opposed to old technology where you kind of had to go out and manually and mechanically set openings in your hoppers, throwing from ditch to ditch, which is kind of the old school way that we applied material, whereas now we can concentrate all of that material on the lane that we're working and trying to clear.
These new systems control more than just material distribution out onto the roadway.
And you also have the ability, it also controls the hydraulic features of the truck, which are up there working on raising and lowering your height of your plows, not only your front plows, but your belly plows, which gives you just total control from inside the cab, which is safer, it's more efficient.
This work doesn't end with the new trucks. The department is working on new ways to more efficiently use taxpayer money on its current fleet.
We have an existing pretty good sized fleet of trucks that are used every day. Whether they're a new generation truck or not, we're making them a newer generation just by adding new hydraulic systems. Gives that operator more control in the cab of the truck. So just because the old truck out there doesn't have a belly plow, we are starting to equip more and more and more of our trucks with those hydraulic and electronic control systems that it's set in the cab of the truck.
It takes a lot of work to equip these trucks. They help AHTD be more efficient with taxpayer funds, but this work has broader impacts than just cost savings.
Obviously, increasing the efficiency and being able to concentrate more material on the lane that you're working on, you're going to more effectively treat that lane, which ultimately allows you to treat more lane miles, which is what everyone's wanting to do.
These trucks tend to cost a lot of money. In 2014, AHTD received $200,000 in general improvement funds to purchase one belly plow for Benton County. With the high price tags on these trucks, AHTD makes sure they are able to be used year-round.
What we're hoping for and what we think we'll see is the added benefit of being able to haul material, which is a very important function for maintenance forces throughout the year. We're constantly hauling material. That belly plow in the off-season can come off, quickly detaches, and then we add what's called a third pusher axle. We're able to basically double our capacity of hauling. It saves us money. During the off-season, the districts will be getting these trucks from us, and they'll be hauling material, whether it be gravel, asphalt, or whatever material they're using out in their maintenance work. So we're hoping to get just as much benefit from these trucks in the off-season as we do the winter season.
AHTD is striving for new heights of snow and ice removal that we have made over the past year.
What we call the new generation snow and ice removal truck. It's a bigger, heavier, more accurate, more efficient truck to do what we need to do out there. The trucks are sitting at every district ready to be loaded and ready to hit the road.
The dual purpose approach, or tri-purpose approach even, would seem to go at least some distance, Mr. Bennett, toward resolving or addressing the dilemma that any manager has to make. How much do our highway executive has to make? How much money do I put into rolling stock when I may use it 5 times a year, or I may not use it at all.
That's exactly right. And that was one of our goals when we increased our investment in our maintenance area, was making sure that what we did was going to serve a dual purpose. Because, like you said, we might have one winter weather event a year, we might have 5, we might have 0. We didn't want this equipment to just sit on the lot all year long. So these are trucks that are bigger. They're basically dump trucks that are outfitted with hydraulics and plows and hoppers to spread the material. But during the summer months, they're actually able to carry out waste material when we clean out ditches, to haul asphalt to places where we're overlaying or patching potholes and things of that nature. So they are very much serving a dual purpose now.
Okay, we have some of your associates at the State Highway and Transportation Department standing by to take questions that we will address in the minutes ahead. You can phone in a question toll-free 800-662-2386. Email questions, of course, are perfectly acceptable. paffairs@aetn.org. Or you can tweet at AETN, #ARAsk. And with that, a couple of other issues. We had some big news this past week, although it was not, I don't think anybody regarded it as totally a surprise, and that was that Mr. Hutchinson, having assured the electorate whatever highway recommendations he would make would involve new taxes,
Right.
unveiled an administration plan for giving the Highway Department additional money, which it would leverage toward $2 billion, $750 million over a decade in state assistance.
That's
to
correct.
leverage to get $2 billion in federal
That's correct.
aid.
That's correct. The governor's working group on highway funding has been working on recommendations since really April of this year. We did find out, especially with an increased level of federal funding coming to Arkansas with the new Fixing America's Surface Transportation Program, that we were going to have trouble matching that federal aid. And normally a highway project is 4 parts federal and 1 part state. And we were going to be short about $50 million of state money to be able to match that federal aid. So that's $200 million a year in federal aid that is at risk. So over a 10-year period, that's exactly right. That gives us access to $2 billion of federal highway money coming to Arkansas. And the important part is to know that that federal money is actually generated here in Arkansas by people buying goods, paying taxes on fuel, things of that nature. That money goes to Washington and then comes back to the states. So it's important to us to be able to take advantage of that federal funding. And his recommendation should keep us at a level where we are able to take advantage of that federal funding.
But the avenue the administration has chosen to take, the Hutchinson administration chosen to take, as the governor himself acknowledged, is sort of it is unprecedented in 70 years, I suppose, almost, and that it goes into general revenues.
That's exactly right. There was a
sore point for any number of agencies and individuals.
It can be at times, but I think the important point is these are taxpayer funds. Whether you call them general revenue, special revenue, highway revenue, or anything, these are taxpayer dollars that will be used to leverage a lot of federal taxpayer dollars so that we can take care of the highway system. And we think that's extremely important. It's important for safety, it's important for mobility, it's important for the economy of the state. But it is unprecedented. There was one year back in the early 2000s when the state surplus had reached a fairly high level that we received some one-time surplus money to do an overlay program. But this is the first time that we have received a recurring source of revenue that from what has been labeled general revenue for many years.
Well, no one would dispute the highway department's needs at all, no one.
Right.
But education advocates, K-12 advocates, higher education advocates, maybe the criminal justice system, and certainly the Health and Human Services establishment,
Right.
would say, wait a minute, we've got needs as well, and you're threatening it.
Well, and that issue has come up in the past, and the way the governor explained it is a lot of this is going to be phased in over time. A lot of it should be able to be absorbed through two different avenues. One is an improved economy in the state that will generate additional revenue, but the other thing is his efficiency project that is about to be undertaken to make sure that government is running as efficiently as possible. So there may be some savings in there, and in the end, no one is really hurt through this. And I think that is his goal. His goal was twofold. One, to be able to keep that level of investment in highways without raising taxes, and number two, to make sure that we can still provide services to the rest of the state.
Why not a motor? I mean, admittedly, the politics of it are not politic right now, but a fuel tax increase.
And that's been discussed.
With oil prices plummeting, you know, per pump prices really going down.
That's exactly right. And that issue was discussed a lot. And some of the working group's recommendations did involve a fuel tax increase. But in the end, it was the politically appropriate thing to do, because there really is no appetite for any form of a tax increase at this point. Timing-wise, with fuel prices so low, that may have been the best thing to do. One of the things that we have to remember about the revenue from a fuel tax is that it is a flat to declining source of revenue, because as the vehicle fleet turns over, it becomes more efficient. And in recent years, our revenue from the fuel tax has been declining, even though vehicle miles traveled has been increasing, and that's because people are driving more fuel-efficient vehicles. And that trend is expected to continue.
Speaking on to the larger political stage, and I guess I'm talking federal congressional politics or the state of American politics, which you have to deal with at least the residue of it, and that is the agony of getting a surface bill through Congress.
And that has been
the uncertainty. I mean,
there has been a lot. There has been a lot of uncertainty. Just last month, in December, the president signed a 5-year federal surface transportation bill. That is the first long-term federal bill that we've had in 10 years. The last bill was a 2-year bill. We've been operating under stopgap funding measures for a couple of years now. A lot of times that funding comes to you with a guarantee of only a few months at a time. And they're dealing with the same thing at the federal level. The fuel tax is declining at the federal level. The way they have worked it at the federal level is to insert general revenue into the Federal Highway Trust Fund to the tune of about $80 billion since 2008, so we can keep that same level of federal investment in highways also. So Arkansas is really a miniature version of what's happening in Washington as far as surface transportation and taxes to pay for it.
No new taxes.
Correct.
Right, or at least at the fuel level. The other really, at the moment, hot button, I think, issue for the department involves the Interstate 30 project through metropolitan or through downtown Little Rock.
Right.
Is this settled from the department standpoint?
From the department standpoint, no. We are still undergoing studies. We are in the environmental phase at this point. When the half-cent sales tax program passed back in 2012, this was one of the projects that was included in that program. We have been working on this for the last couple of years. We've had about 100 different meetings, public meetings, stakeholder meetings, community meetings, to try to explain what the issues are, to try to come to some solution. At this point, the two alternatives that we are evaluating in the environmental study are an 8-lane alternative and a 10-lane alternative, but the 10-lane alternative is actually 6 through lanes with 4 really local lanes, 2 on each side, that will carry traffic between downtown Little Rock and North Little Rock. We're also evaluating all the comments that we've heard from the public, and some of those do include things such as, well, converting the interstate to a boulevard so so it's more like a city street than an interstate. So we're looking at all these issues to make sure that we can handle traffic safely and efficiently for many, many years in the future. There's another public meeting that'll be coming up in February where we will show them some more detail on some of the interchange improvements that are being recommended. Then we'll have another public hearing later in 2016 where we think that's the point where we will have a recommendation to carry forward to the next phase.
Are you taking that seriously, though? Your critics say that you're not, that it's basically it's a done deal.
Well, absolutely we're taking it seriously, and we take our public involvement very seriously. One thing I've learned from dealing with a lot of my counterparts around the country is we have one of the most extensive public involvement programs in the nation, and we have already made a lot of changes to the proposed improvements based on those public comments. We're on the north side of the river on I-40 where you have the left-hand ramps that come onto I-30. Those are being converted to right-hand ramps, which are much more typical and easier to navigate. We have worked with communities in North Little Rock to ensure that we can keep some interchanges intact for local improvements. One of the things that we've heard is reducing the footprint of the Highway 10 interchange as much as possible. One of the things that we've heard is making sure that we can keep the river rail line, the trolley line intact, and we have made changes for that. So we have made a lot of changes to respond to the public comment. In the end, it is true that our concern, our mission, our function really is to make sure that we can move people and goods safely and efficiently. We're trying to do everything we can to lengthen bridges so you can open up more space underneath the bridges for pedestrian and bicycle access across Interstate 30. So we have responded to a lot of these comments, but one of the things we have to remember too is we're using this money from the half-cent sales tax program, which is really intended to add capacity to the highway system.
An environmental assessment of a public works project of that size. Should the environmental, you're an engineer. I mean,
Correct, that's right.
Should the environmental include the sociological and the aesthetic?
It absolutely does. In our environmental process, and this is prescribed through federal law, and in the end I should mention that the Federal Highway Administration is the one that will end up approving whatever proposal comes out of this process. But we call our environmental process the SEE process, S-E-E, and that acronym stands for Social, Economic, and Environmental Impacts. So we are looking at all of those impacts from an economic standpoint, from a social standpoint, on noise and air quality, on aesthetics, and all of those things. So we are actually required by federal law to address all of those issues in the environmental process.
Scott Bennett is our guest. He is the executive director of the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department. Some of your questions now, if we may. Scott, this comes from Washington County, going through north through Fayetteville to Missouri. When will I-49 be done to Missouri?
That is a really good question. We're in the process of investing about $350 million in widening the section of I-49 from the south side of Fayetteville to Bentonville. The Bella Vista bypass is under construction now. We actually have the funding to complete it as a 4-lane interstate to the state line. What we're waiting on now is Missouri. We have been back and forth with Missouri for several years over this. At one time we were going to toll it. Missouri didn't have tolling authority. Missouri came up with a funding program. They had money. At that time we didn't have money. And then when the half-cent sales tax passed, we had enough money to proceed with our side of the Bella Vista bypass. And now we are. That's well underway right now. Several sections are open at this time, and we have the money set aside to complete it, but we need to coordinate that with Missouri. And we're hoping this new federal highway bill will allow them to proceed with their side of it so it could be open all the way into Missouri just in the next few years.
From Sebastian County, Greenwood specifically, someone who suggests that the police in that community are writing too many tickets. They would like to see the 55 mile per hour speed limit raised on non-interstates.
It is higher on some non-interstates. If it is a continuous 4-lane highway, we have 60 miles an hour on some of those. One of the things that we look at is the speed at which the highway was designed to accommodate. And that's one of the things that we have to look at. And in Greenwood, you do have a lot of development in play, a lot of it because of driveways and things of that nature. 55 is a much safer speed to drive.
Oh, from Pulaski County, could you update Pulaski County on the other Pulaski County project, and that's the Broadway Bridge?
The Broadway Bridge, absolutely. They have had a setback or two because of high water, but we are still on track now to close down the bridge in either May or June. And at that time, the bridge will be closed for the schedule shows 6 months. We're hoping it can be opened back sooner than that. But in either May or June, we will close down the bridge so we can demolish the existing bridge and they can continue with the superstructure of the new bridge. And that should take about 6 months to complete and be able to open up the new bridge. We will be doing a lot of public involvement in advance of closing this bridge so people can get used to the alternate routes they have to take. But we are on schedule to close it down in either May or June to demolish the old bridge and put the deck on the new bridge.
They'll be getting used to a lot.
They will. And our goal is to have this completed before anything on I-30 is under construction.
Okay, from Saline County, have you were asked the status of your partnering program with local communities?
You know, back in 2005, we actually set a policy where we would encourage local entities to partner with us, and a lot of that has to do with the lack of funding to go around as much as it really needs to. Over that period of time, over that last 10 years, we have had local governments bring about $250 million to the table for highway improvements. A lot of it has been done in Northwest Arkansas, a lot of it in Central Arkansas, actually, other than Little Rock. Little Rock hasn't really partnered with us much yet. And the city of Jonesboro has recently come to us and said, we're willing to provide $8 million toward highway improvements in the city of Jonesboro over the next few years. So partnering has really been a way for the locals to invest in solving their own traffic problems and help us to expedite a lot of those projects.
A Saline County viewer wants to know if you are spending your money wisely. The caller from the question seems to take issue with department funding for trails, education programs, and the like.
And that's understandable, and we hear that from time to time, that highway revenue should be used to build highways. Now, one thing you have to remember is when you receive funding from Congress, a lot of times it does come with strings attached. We get about $11 or $12 million a year in what's called a Transportation Alternatives Program, and that is trails, sidewalks, and things of that nature for alternative type transportation. That money can only be spent on those items: trails, safe routes to schools, sidewalks, things of that nature. All of that money is given out in grants to local governments, and they have to match it. So we're not spending any of our state money on those items, and we're only spending the federal money on those items that we're required to spend.
Van Buren County, the I-30 River, all the way from Van Buren, I-30 River project, you considered a double-deck bridge?
We have. That was one of the early alternatives that we looked at, and it was screened out early in the process, largely because of the cost.
Which would be compared to what the department is proposing now. How much?
Compared to what, and we have about $630 million allocated to this project, from South Terminal at Interstate 440 up to Interstate 40. The cost of a double-decker bridge was going to be significantly higher than that. It was going to require additional right-of-way because you have to span the bridge that's underneath. The proposal that we have now, even widening to 10 lanes, is going to require very little additional right-of-way. So with the additional impacts and really building a double-decker bridge, you're building it for true through traffic, and a lot of the traffic in that corridor is really destined for, or it originates in various places in downtown Little Rock and North Little Rock. So from a functionality standpoint, an impact standpoint, and a cost standpoint, we screen that one out early in the process.
Why, asks the viewer, Logan County, is the department doing as good a job as it could on mowing, particularly during mowing season, and keeping the rights of way clear?
And we are doing as good a job as we can do. We have 3 mowing cycles during the summer, and a lot of that is because of cost. If we had to mow any more, it would cost us a lot more. So we try to mow right around Memorial Day. We try to mow once in July or so, and we try to mow once again around Labor Day, so we can get a lot of the peak periods. And one of the things you got to remember is a lot of routes we have wildflowers on, and we try to let those wildflowers bloom and then cut them at a time where they will actually reseed and grow again. So we're doing about as good a job as we can. One of the things where we get caught is if you have a really wet spring and it takes you a little while to mow, and then a couple of times we've had a really wet summer, and sometimes it's just hard to get the equipment in there. But we're doing a pretty good job. Doing any more would require a lot more manpower, equipment, and money.
Your department has its own enforcement division, the
Correct.
Highway Police.
Correct.
A viewer wants to know if the Highway Police, does it have the authority to patrol or to police or to stop vehicles other than transportation vehicles?
They do. They are actually fully licensed law enforcement officers, so they have all the authority that any law enforcement officer has, and in addition they have the knowledge and the expertise to enforce commercial vehicle laws. So they are fully licensed law enforcement officers.
Is it understood that they are to concentrate on commercial vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. And most of the time, if they have a contact with a vehicle that is not a commercial vehicle, it's because they see a dangerous situation going on. And in that case, really, they are licensed and to really protect the safety of the traveling public.
We reduced, according to this caller, we reduced the speed limit for trucks on the interstate system, or eliminated the reduced.
We did.
Was that prudent?
We think it was. At the time that we did it, one of the things we look at when we set speed limits is how fast are vehicles actually traveling, and that's really the engineering way to set a speed limit. Is you check the speeds of the vehicles and you set the speed limit at the point in which 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below. And there was a difference in the speed for commercial vehicles and cars. A lot of the trucks had governors on their engines. They couldn't drive any faster, but a lot of those have been taken care of. And as traffic has grown, it has become more efficient, really, to have the same speed limit for cars and trucks.
From Benton County, 412. 412. You can take it from there. You know where this is going.
Well, we have a $100 million project underway to build the first phase of the US 412 Springdale bypass, and that is from Interstate 49 out to the west, and it will actually ultimately serve as a connector to the new regional airport, XNA. So that project is a big project, the largest project that we have ever awarded as a department, and it's going to be about a 4-year project. And at $100 million, that's only about a fourth of the money that we need to complete the entire bypass around Springdale.
I think many, many years ago, when I was actively covering the commission, the cost, with a long time ago, the cost of new construction on a 4-lane divided highway was said to be $1 million a mile. What is it today? About
$10 million a mile. It has risen astronomically. And when we built the new interstate from Interstate 40 up to Fayetteville, it's about 45 miles. It was about $460 million. A lot of people have said, well, that was in the mountainous area, so it cost more because you had bridges. Well, the section of interstate that we have built and opened up from Texarkana down to Louisiana state line, $10 million a mile. So building a new 4-lane divided interstate is about $10 million a mile now.
Well, is that inflation, if it will, or that adjustment, is that spread across all elements of construction? I mean, labor, materials, what?
It really is, and you know, one of the things that we did recently is we went back and set 1993 as a baseline, and the reason we did that is 1993 was the last year that we had a federal fuel tax increase. Since 1993, the construction cost index in Arkansas has gone up about 180%. So a lot of that is inflation in materials, and a lot of it is the labor force, but that has been a tremendous impact on our budget, is just the increase in the cost of doing business.
The loop from 440 to 430 at Crystal Hill, timeline, if you can.
The loop from 440 to 430 at Crystal Hill, I assume they're talking about the North Belt Freeway.
Yes, I sort of, yeah.
I think that's right. We actually had plans and had funding ready to start building the North Belt Freeway probably 15 or so years ago. At that time, the city of Sherwood was starting to expand. They wanted to have some development that was right in the line that we were planning to build North Belt. We went back and reevaluated it, pushed the line to the north. At that time, we got caught in the cost increases. The cost of that project went up about $500 million. At the same time, we widened Interstate 40 through North Little Rock, and it really reduced some of the demand for the North Belt Freeway. And because of those high costs, because of reducing the demand, that one is actually not on the drawing board anymore. And for the Central Arkansas area, it's not part of their long-range plan now. At this time, we're actually starting to look at an extension of Highway 89 from Mayflower over to the east to come in, you know, somewhere around the Cabot area as an alternative to the North Belt Freeway.
Director Bennett of the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department here to take your questions. 1-800-662-2386, toll-free call, operator standing by. Email questions, paffairs@aetn.org, or you may tweet at AETN, #ARAsk. In exchange, he was fairly explicit about this. Mr. Hutchinson, in unveiling his program, Monday or Tuesday, was explicit in saying that in return for this assistance, both the executive and the legislative ought to be able to expect the commission, and you're an employee of the commission.
Correct.
Would expect the commission / the department to be more, I think he used the term transparent. What did he mean by that? What do you take it?
Well, and I've had those conversations with the governor too, and I've had those conversations with many of the legislators. And I think what it boils down to is when you can really sit down and have a conversation with someone about the way we operate, they understand it, and they understand that we are being as efficient and transparent as we can. I think the issue really is a better education of everybody about, for everyone, about what we do and how we do it. You know, we have a lot of information available. We provide a lot of information to a lot of people, but highway funding can be a really tricky subject. It can be a really sticky subject at times because there are projects we're able to do, there are projects that we aren't able to do, and I think the issue is we have to do a better job in educating everybody, not just the administrative branch, not just the legislative branch, but the public in general about the process that we go through to fund maintenance, administration, operations, and construction. So I think it's really a good goal.
Is the system as presently structured, it doesn't always permit the dollar to follow the car, so to speak.
Well,
is there any?
Well, and that's one of the things that we've heard, and that's one of the issues where
you hear it a lot.
We hear it a lot, but I'm not sure that people really understand that issue because highways work together as a system, and we've also heard, you know, spend the money where the population is. But I'll give you two examples. Number one, Interstate 40 in Prairie County has more vehicles on that section than there are people that live in Prairie County. So a lot of it is a connection between places. People have said that, and I've used the example of Interstate 49 from Alma to Fayetteville. If you spent the money based on the revenue that the population of that county generated, it would be about 30 more years before we could complete I-49 through Crawford County. So we have to consider things as a system. And one of the things we've done, because we do have such a large highway system, is we have developed the Arkansas Primary Highway Network, and it is actually 50% of the highway system that carries 90% of the traffic, and it is a very connected system. And over the past 10 years, we have spent more than 90% of our revenue on that system that carries 90% of the traffic. And I think that's another issue where we have to do a better job of educating people about how highway funding works and how highways work as a system.
We have a viewer from southeast Arkansas, southern Arkansas, well, no, specifically southeast Arkansas, according to the viewer's email, who thinks the system is not working very well and that southeast Arkansas is not getting its presumably fair share.
You know, everywhere I've been around the state, central Arkansas or the four corners of the state, everyone says that same thing. We're not getting our fair share. If everyone from all corners of the state thinks that, then someone must be wrong, because if they're not getting their fair share, somebody's getting more than their fair share, and nobody thinks they're getting their fair share. As far as southeast Arkansas goes, we finished widening Highway 65 just a few years ago, so now you have a 4-lane connection from Little Rock down to the Mississippi River. Beyond that, there's really not a lot of need for capacity improvements in southeast Arkansas, so our concentration in the past few years and in the very near future is going to be on maintaining the existing highways that we have. And I think a lot of that is cyclical too, so they will see a lot of improvements to the existing highways in southeast Arkansas in the next few years.
You and I were talking after following Governor Hutchinson's news conference where he unveiled this program earlier this week, and you described it as if achieved, the administration's program, basically marking time, that
Right.
It would allow the department to do not much more, if anything more, than simply mark time.
Correct.
How do we do more than mark time? Obviously more money, but that you don't see that in the car.
Well, and the
I mean,
governor's...
fuel taxes have been ruled out, at least for the time.
Well, and that's true. Now, the governor's working group has recommended that we stay intact to start looking at mid-range and long-range funding targets, because really what we have at hand is just a part of even the short-range funding target. The recommendation was for $110 million a year for the department. The governor's plan would get us about $50 million a year now, growing to about $80 million if the economy stays strong over the next few years. What I had said to a lot of people before the increased funding from the federal government and from the state was that, you know, if something is not done to increase investment in highways in Arkansas, my job becomes managing the decline of the highway system. So with this increase in federal funding of about $50 million a year, an increase in state funding at about $50 million a year, you're going to see us concentrate a lot more on maintaining the existing highways that we have. So what that means is, over time, you're going to see the overall condition of our highway system stay about the same. Some highways will be improved, but at the same time those highways are improved, other highways will continue to deteriorate. So without additional investment, it's going to be hard to have a marked improvement of the system as a whole.
Hundreds, thousands of miles in the state system that I have to imagine you would prefer not be in the state system, and that got there through some mysterious, not so mysterious way over the past decades.
That's correct. We have the 12th largest highway system in the country. Our highway system is larger than the highway systems in New York, Florida, and California, which is really odd. over time, we were gifted about 5,500 miles of highways. They were county roads that were given to us legislatively. We went out and improved those county roads through a couple of rural road programs, and now, hey, no one wants them back. And it's our job to try to manage them. And one of the things that we've done, like I mentioned before, is establish this Arkansas Primary Highway Network so we can make sure that we're focusing on that half of the system that carries 90% of the traffic. And with the rest of them, the best we can do is mow the rights of way, seal the cracks as best we can, patch the potholes as best we can, and just try to hold them together.
Gift that keeps on giving.
It has been the gift that keeps on giving. That's correct.
Highway 70, I-30 to Hot Springs. What do we have planned to reduce the boy? That personally, that is a treacherous piece of road.
Well, it has been, and one of the things that I think everyone has to realize is that there were 10 fatalities over or 10 fatal crashes over the last year or so. There were several of those fatal crashes that involved alcohol or involved drug use. So one of the things that we've got to make sure we do is get the word out to everybody, and that's us, state police, everyone, about the dangers of impaired driving, because that had a lot to do with it. The other thing we found out is that even though the speed limit on that section is 55 miles an hour, that average speed was about 70 miles an hour. So we have gone out and we have put in centerline rumble strips to try to prevent people from crossing over into another lane, shoulder rumble strips to try to warn them when they're driving off the shoulder of the road. We have some speed trailers up now that will flash your speed at you as you drive by. State police have really stepped up their enforcement. Since we've done this in the past month, fortunately, there have been no fatal crashes. Also, the average speed has dropped quite a bit. Now, it's still higher than the speed limit, but it has dropped quite a bit. Now, later this year, we have a project slated to widen Highway 70 all the way from I-30 to Hot Springs, and we think the additional lanes for the additional capacity, the safer design of the highway will have a lot to improve safety.
And you have we have some contact information for questions of the department after this broadcast has ended, which we will put up on the screen now. I think, and this is how viewers can make inquiries of the department.
Well, that's true. We have our overall website, www.arkansashighways.com. There you can submit questions through that. We also have a website, idrivearkansas.com, and you can submit questions through that. It's also our travel site, especially with the winter weather. You can go to idrivearkansas.com. You can check the condition of the roads. You can see what is on the road, and you can also see what the traffic flow is like on that road. idrivearkansas.com also has information about our construction programs and the status of a lot of that construction. So there's a lot of information on idrivearkansas.com. You can follow us on Twitter at AHTD. You can submit questions to us that way, and we'll be happy to do our best to answer them.
In fact, the department has, this is along the lines of this discussion we just had about 70 from 30 to Hot Springs. And that's the department has its own initiative regarding safety and fatalities.
And that's
or
correct.
Safety.
That's correct. We have a program called Towards Zero Deaths that we have worked with various entities around the state, including state police, the health department, a lot of emergency responders to develop this program. And it is targeted at reducing fatalities on our highway system. A lot of that has to do with educational efforts about driving too fast, making sure you use your seatbelt, making sure you don't drive when you're impaired. A lot of it is targeting low-cost safety measures like our cable median barriers that we've been putting up around the state, shoulder rumble strips and things of that nature to reduce a lot of our run-off-the-road crashes. So that is a big effort that we have to try to increase the safety of our highways. And fatalities until 2015 have actually been going down. They've been trending downward, and there was a little bit of an uptick, not just in Arkansas, but nationwide in 2015. And it really seems that a lot of that has to do with distracted driving. And that's not impaired driving. That's texting while you drive and things of that nature. So a lot of this is going to be an educational effort. A lot of it is going to be an enforcement effort. And a lot of it is going to be an engineering effort to make sure we can design our highways to be as safe as possible.
Now, this is anecdotal, but I've heard a number of people say, would it not be, is it not feasible for the department to make what these individuals believe would be a major step towards safety? Would it not be affordable for the department simply at times to restripe highways rather than forget the pavement, forget the asphalt, just to restripe?
It would, and we actually have a couple of statewide striping crews that are out almost all year long, weather and temperature permitting, and that's actually not enough. We are going to have a pretty major striping project, a contract project that we let the contracted this spring that is going to do a lot of that work to replace our striping, to replace a lot of our delineators or the reflectors. And one thing you got to realize is a lot of times when you do that in a year and you have a winter weather event and our snowplows come by, they're going to plow up the striping, and then there go the reflectors. So it really needs to be an annual maintenance type program. But we're going to have a striping contract this spring that will do a lot of our major routes, and then we're going to have to make sure that we can try to maintain them. But again, it's an issue of manpower, and it's an issue of funding.
Construction west of DeQueen on 70.
Yes. There was a project that was proposed.
Sevier County.
Yes, the Sevier County. There was a project that was proposed. Actually, that was on Highway 71 around the DeQueen area, where we were going to widen a section of highway, and we needed the city to relocate some water lines, and the city's done that, and we're going to have that section underway in the next few years. But as far as Highway 70 west of DeQueen, other than maintenance type work, we don't have anything planned.
All right. From Sebastian County again, has the department, to what extent, if any, has the department structured its thinking institutionally toward smarter cars, electric cars,
Well, we've done a lot of that, and here's something that's really interesting. I'm actually on the executive committee of the Transportation Research Board, which is part of the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. And we have done a lot of research nationally about the autonomous vehicle, the self-driving vehicles, driverless cars. That's exactly right. And a lot of people think those are the answer. And at some point in the future, they will probably be a valuable part of the fleet. One of the things that we're finding now is that they have actually led to a decrease in safety in some situations, largely because these smart cars are designed to obey the law in all instances, and drivers really don't. One of the things that we're looking at now is that the projection may actually lead to an increase in vehicle miles traveled, because if people can actually, work or play or sleep while they're being driven somewhere, it may drive more people to the outskirts of the city. So it may actually increase the demand on our highways. So those are a lot of the things that are really having to be studied, and a lot of the regulations about driverless vehicles. And are they going to be purely driverless, or are you going to require the driver to be in the seat where he can take control of the vehicle if something goes wrong? So those things are coming in the future. With as many pickup trucks as we have in Arkansas, nobody's working on a driverless pickup truck that can haul a boat or a trailer right now. So it may be a little while before those are really prevalent in Arkansas.
Expanding 630 between Martin Luther King, MLK, and University to eliminate a 15 to 20 minute delay, says this caller. How do we know that the I-30 expansion will eliminate that congestion?
The congestion on 630?
On 630.
Most of the congestion on 630 at this time is between the Baptist Hospital exit and University Avenue. And we actually have a project as part of our half-cent sales tax program to widen that section to 8 lanes. At that point, we are going to have to do a lot more evaluation of the rest of Interstate 630. Now, one of the things that we are looking at as part of the I-30 project is more of an auxiliary lane coming onto 630 westbound to go down to about Louisiana. But once we get the Interstate 30 project underway, we plan to undertake a more extensive evaluation of Interstate 630 to see what improvements may be needed in the future.
Toll roads. They seem to be, according to Sebastian County Viewer, they seem to be, we certainly run into them when we leave Arkansas. They're everywhere.
Well, that's true. And toll roads are really a function of 2 things. The cost and the number of vehicles that drive on them, because that's what generates the revenue. And in plain and simple terms, most places in Arkansas, we don't have the number of vehicles to generate the revenue to cover the cost of the improvement. And I'll give you 2 examples, and one will be an exception. And the first one, though, is the Bella Vista Bypass. When we looked at the Bella Vista Bypass as a toll road, the cost of the Bella Vista Bypass is about $250 million. The cost that you could cover with toll revenue is about $100 million. So you actually have to have the other $150 million up front to go with the revenue bonds that you can issue based on future toll revenue to be able to build it and start to collect the revenue so you can pay off the $100 million loan you got over a 40-year period. So it really, in a lot of cases, becomes a matter of just economics. It's not economically feasible. Now, one place that is feasible is Interstate 40 between North Little Rock and West Memphis. You could cover the cost of an additional lane in each direction with toll revenue, but there is a federal prohibition against tolling the interstate, with the exception of some of the ones out east that have been grandfathered in. So we've done about 50 toll studies over the last 50 years. We're still looking for the right project to be able to implement as a toll road.
One more time, we're going to put up on the screen, Mr. Bennett, the information for contacting the department with further questions or for additional information about all manner of situations, including weather, driving conditions. There you are.
That's exactly right. www.arkansashighways.com for all the general highway information, and for all your travel information, www.idrivearkansas.com. Winter weather conditions, winter road conditions, travel conditions, and all of the information about our construction projects.
May we all drive safely at the conclusion of this program, which we have reached. Director Bennett, thank you for the past hour.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for...
Next time on Doc Martin. Martin and Louisa are living apart.
Should I not be here?
2.5.
Around the old casserole now and again, if you like.
Doc Martin,